Over the past 3 years of war, an unlikely weapon, the humble first-person view FPV drone, has driven an order of magnitude, once-in-a-century revolution in battlefield lethality. Cheap, ubiquitous, and precision-guided, the swarms of little quadcopters buzzing over Ukraine's battlefields have perhaps not made legacy tech armored vehicles and artillery completely obsolete. But it's been a close-run thing. At the very least, an ungainly aircraft about the size of a dinner plate has become without a question the armed forces of Ukraine's AFU most deadly weapon. By any measure, Ukrainian FPV drones have changed the way battles have to be fought and how soldiers die, in a technical revolution comparable to the arrival of the tank and machine gun during World War I. The AFU, unlike in legacy armies that rely on rigorous government contracting, established military institutions, and politicized arms acquisition, shifted from conventional tactics and its arsenal of inherited weapons to a drone-led military, in a transformation that has come almost completely from the bottom up. Thanks to Russia's first invasion of Ukraine in 2014 and active battle lines formed in Ukraine's eastern regions during the subsequent 8 years, by February 2022, the AFU was already an energetic user of battle drones. For the most part, Chinese Mavic drones bought by donations and flown by enthusiasts. In a few formations, Ukrainian drone tactics have accelerated, if anything, faster than production. But in the early days, a single drone operated on its own, with the pilot only linked to other units by voice was the norm. Now, AFU video feeds are integrated into data centers, ground commanders are plugged into the feeds, and battle tactics are, to a large extent, built not around traditional infantry or armor forces, but the availability of drones. A typical tactical template for a Ukrainian combat brigade operating in defense places long-range observation drones over probable attack routes. If the enemy is spotted, FPV drones are called in for strikes. Once a Russian assault column is in range, shorter-range observation drones will call in artillery or mortars, while heavy drones with armor-piercing munitions concentrate their attacks on tanks, other armored vehicles, or air defense platforms. While from the direction of Kursk a lot of interesting updates, Ukrainians obliterated a Russian armored column attempting to break through to North Korean troops stranded near Nikolski for over a week. Here, after spending too much time fighting alongside North Korean troops, the Russians have started borrowing their tactics in a desperate attempt to break the siege on their stranded allies in the hamlet of Nikolski. But as they charged forward in human waves, draped in Soviet flags and heading straight into Ukrainian fire, the rescue mission quickly turned into yet another battlefield catastrophe. The goal of the Russian forces in this area is to reach the village of Nikolski and relieve the North Korean soldiers stuck on the outer edges of the settlement left over from the previous assaults. This is because Ukrainians maintain strict fire control over all supply lines to Nikolski, leaving the North Koreans completely cut off from resupply for over a week now. To prevent Ukrainians from capturing a large part of the North Korean contingent, Russians attempted to link up with their allies by launching a massive mechanized assault over the fields. Russians hoped that mechanized assault units would be able to provide enough of a firepower advantage through their tanks and BMP infantry fighting vehicles to expand their area of control and relieve the North Koreans. The main advantage of the Russian forces in this area is the extremely cold weather, which has caused the ground to freeze solid, enabling Russian armor to move freely across the fields instead of being restricted to the heavily mined roads. Furthermore, if we look at the topographic map, we can see that the Russian approaches are largely shielded from Ukrainian firing positions by a hill ridge, which protects them from targeting by Ukrainian ATGM positions for a large portion of their journey. However, once they cross the ridge, the Russian forces are directly exposed to Ukrainian fire from the eastern hill ridge, which allows Ukrainian forces to fire on top of the armored assault groups. Additionally, the lack of tree lines in this last part of the journey gives the Russians no cover for the most dangerous portion of their assault. Unfortunately for the Russians, Ukrainians decided to make this already deadly kill zone even worse. They used remote mining techniques with drones and artillery to scatter a large number of landmines across these fields, effectively extending the minefield from around the roads to cover the entire field. Additionally, the clear weather allowed Ukrainians to increase their drone surveillance in the area, enabling them to detect Russian assaults even before they reached the hill. Geolocated combat footage reveals how Russian forces launched mechanized assaults using several BTR armored personnel carriers and tanks. However, the column quickly came under attack by Ukrainian precision strikes, including kamikaze drones, landmines, and artillery fire. Notably, Russian soldiers adorned their tanks and vehicles with Soviet flags, attempting to recreate the mass charges of the past. However, as many of the Russian armored personnel carriers and tanks were rapidly disabled, Russian soldiers resorted to advancing across open fields on foot. These human wave formations, similar to previous North Korean assaults, ended in complete disaster for the Russian infantry. The Russian vehicles that survived the initial ambush pressed forward but were also quickly disabled and destroyed by Ukrainian precision fire, leaving dozens of wrecked vehicles scattered across the fields near Nikolski. The besieged North Koreans could do nothing but watch the disaster unfold, while the Russians conducted a disastrous assault on Nikolski in the hope of relieving the cutoff of North Korean forces. Overall, their plan backfired because Ukrainians meticulously prepared a kill zone to efficiently deal with the Russian assault. These losses only further drained the already limited Russian reserves, while Ukrainians maintain powerful defensive positions that stand despite the intense pressure. As the attempt to resupply the North Koreans in Nikolski failed, the survivors of the latest Russian assault will only add to the supply issues, with more mouths to feed and wounded to take care of.